Hello, everybody, and welcome to this all-new episode of the Fairfax Sports Report. Week 7 in the books. We're headed into Week 8 of Northern Region football. We're going to be joined soon by Greg Wyszynski of the Fairfax Sports Network. He's going to tell us all about the big West Springfield South County upset, and Lake Braddock Lions coach and DB coach Chris Weiler, an assistant coach under Jim Poitras, will be joining us to tell us about the Bruins' great start to this season here in 2007 in the Northern Region. I'm your host, BJ Kubaroulis, alongside of, well, you know the guys, Paul Frummelt and John Marcario, these two knuckleheads from the Connection newspapers, and Dave Bushenfeld of the Fairfax County Times, right down there on the end, and your local pundits to bring you, well, all the action from Week 7 and take you into Week 8. So let's jump right into it and show the folks at home, of course, about our new segment on the Fairfax Sports Network. Go to our website. You can comment on our stories and tell everyone here on the Fairfax Sports Report what you think of what we have to say. But before we get to that, let's thank the folks that make this show possible. And, of course, we're talking about our underwriters that keep us afloat here at the Fairfax Sports Network. Talking about CCI screen printing for all your screen printing needs at 703-978-0257. All right, guys, and I mentioned it each week. You can go to the website. That's fairfaxsportsnetwork.com, and you can click on our stories, comment. We'll replay the best comment of the week every week here on the Fairfax Sports Report. All right, guys, we mentioned it. Week 7 in the books. Let's jump right into these PowerPoints. Let's explain a little bit of a disagreement we had last week. Last week, I, BJ Kubaroulis, made a mistake. I was wrong. Yes, it happens. I was wrong about the PowerPoints and how you get PowerPoints. Anacostia, a team that Robinson played, got them some PowerPoints. And John Marcario of the Connection newspapers had that point down correct. He was correct on his notion that you do get PowerPoints for playing out of the Northern Region and out of the state of Virginia. So we want to show the folks at home exactly what the PowerPoint race is and who sits where. We want to make sure we are clear and show you folks at this point in the season who would make the playoffs. John Marcario, why don't you run us through it?
All right, well, here we go in Division 5. Madison, they will sit at the top with a 29.1 PowerPoint rating. They have a big game against the number 2 team, the Stonebridge Bulldogs, who sit second with a 28 PowerPoint rating. Then you sit third, the sleeper team, in my opinion, in that region, at Edison. They have 26.4 points. And then the next 5 kind of intertwine. 4, you have Marshall with 23 PowerPoints. 5, you have Mount Vernon with 22.6 PowerPoints. 6 is Yorktown with 21.6 PowerPoints. 7 is Washington and Lee with 19.6 PowerPoints. And 8th is South Lakes with 19.4 PowerPoints. 7 and 8 will probably change throughout the next 3 weeks as teams such as Lee and Hayfield and a lot of the other 1- and 2-win teams may pick up another win or two.
All right, and those are your Division 5 PowerPoint leaders. And at this point in the season in Division 5, South Lakes, guys, would make the playoffs. And that says something about the playoff system. We won't get too deep into that. We'll save that for later in the season as we start to break down the new system. But let's jump into the Division 6 PowerPoint race. And at this point in the season, who would make the playoffs? Dave Bushenfeld, Westfield. Well, I think everyone knew that.
No surprises in Division 6 so far. Westfield is number 1 with 29.7 points. Chantilly right on their heels with 29.3. Then you have West Springfield, who suffered a tough loss this week with 27.7 points. And Lake Braddock, who has won 6 games in a row, are number 4 with 27.4.
You can see right there, Robinson's there at number 5 with 26.3. West Potomac, 25.5. Oakton and South County are both tied for 7th with 24.4 PowerPoints.
And, you know, you mentioned a team there in South County with the big win that they had this week over West Springfield, 35-31, a homecoming game. We'll get a chance to talk about that game in just a minute, but let's jump into the Patriot District standings, John Marcario, and show the folks at home exactly now, after this big week of upsets, who sits where in the Patriot District standings.
Well, the Patriot District standings change weekly there. Lake Braddock currently sits at the top. They are 4-0 in district play, 6-1 overall. They become the new region darlings. Second is West Springfield. They are 3-1 in district play, 5-2 overall. As BJ said, they did have that surprising loss against South County this week. Stallions sit third, 3-1 in district play, 4-3 overall, have won 3 games in a row to get themselves back. West Potomac is 2-2 in district play, 5-2 overall. The Wolverines have lost back-to-back games and have a critical game against South County this week. Annandale is next. They are 2-2 in district play, 4-3 overall. Then there's TC Williams, 2-2 in district play, 3-4 overall. They have a tricky game against the West Springfield team. TC doesn't score much, but does play good defense. And then at the bottom is Hayfield and Lee. Both are 0-4 in district play. Someone's getting off the snide because they play each other this week at Hayfield.
All right, and the Patriot District, I was talking with a coach earlier today, and I said the Patriot District is kind of like the new Concord, and I don't mean by the strength of schedule, because everyone knows the Concord District is where it's at for football. It's the big schools. But the Patriot District has become a fun place to play football. You have a top-heavy group now, and Annandale's always in the mix, so you have 5 legitimate teams that could make a run at the title, guys, with South County, a new school in the mix. It's beautiful over there. South County, we mentioned that team. South County just scored one of the biggest upsets and biggest victories in Pete Bendorf's 3-year rise at the helm there, if you'll call it, as he started that program over in Lorton. Let's show the folks at home exactly what happened in the upset and who were the big leaders in the game. You start off right away for West Springfield, and I don't think anyone's surprised here, John Marcario, a kid that can really get the ball down the field, the quarterback filling in for Peter Lalick last year. 1 INT, but he completed 25 passes for 278 yards. This is in one game, mind you. These are not season stats, guys. 3 touchdowns, and he also rushed 12 times for 50 yards. But it was South County, the new quarterback. South County's Chris Mitchell took over for Ryan Hayrana a couple weeks ago, and look at him now. 5 of 12, 1 pick, 77 yards passing, but also threw for a touchdown. But you see the rushing. That's really where he took over the game. 149 yards rushing and a touchdown. And Titus Pennington comes up big with 2 touchdowns, 1 an 80-yard scamper to seal the deal. But there was also a play at the very end of that game. John Marcario, it was an interception that stopped West Springfield, a team that's very talented offensively, from scoring to tie that game.
Yeah, the interception that Renner had late, that's probably a byproduct of Brandon Bailey not playing that game. West Springfield was forced to pass the ball a lot. They struggled a little bit last year when they're forced to only pass with Peter Lalick. This year, when they have no Brandon Bailey, you see passing-heavy team, couldn't get it down the stretch. That's one of the reasons why they lost in that one.
All right, you talk about Brandon Bailey and a West Springfield team defensively that hasn't been able to get it done. But we're talking to a guy now in Greg Wyszynski that has always gotten it done. Speaking of Greg Wyszynski, he's on the line with us now. Greg Wyszynski gets it done now as a play-by-play analyst for the Fairfax Sports Network, and he was there to call the action in West Springfield's loss to South County. Greg, are you there?
Getting it done, huh?
Greg, always getting it done.
There you
always
go.
getting it done. Greg, what was the story of the game? A homecoming victory for the Stallions and a much-needed win in a team that a lot of people thought maybe was out of the district standings and out of the district race, but here they are now, and they could potentially make the playoffs.
Well, we talked to Coach Bendorf before the game just to get some news and notes about the team, and he kind of downplayed the importance of the game from a PowerPoint's perspective. But if you look at the standings, I mean, obviously this was a game that they needed in a very, very big way after stumbling early in the season. The bottom line is this. I've seen this team twice now. The first time was against Edison, where they were run out of the stadium in the second half of the game. This is a completely different offense because of the change they made at quarterback, putting Chris Mitchell under center. They've got him. They've got Titus Pennington. It's a much more cohesive offensive unit. And I think the most special thing about this win, and the reason why those South County students swarm the field, besides the obvious geographic rivalry with West Springfield, is because this is their first true homecoming. I mean, this was the first time they've had a senior class come back to check out the team, to check out the school, and you just had this feeling all night as South County kind of hung in that game, and just they couldn't get rid of them. They hung around through the half and then in the second half, that they were just on the verge of doing something special.
Now, Greg, you mentioned that South County lost earlier in the season when you saw them play against Edison. They ran a lot of 2 wide out, 2 running back formations. How has that offense changed so much now? They're running more 4 and 5 wide receiver sets and allowing Chris Mitchell, who played quarterback for the Stallions, or who played quarterback his freshman year for Hayfield. How much has their offense has changed now that he's back there?
Well, his ability to run the football is really changing a lot for the Stallions. Bendorf said that Mitchell is an outstanding athlete first and foremost, and probably the best athletic option at quarterback that they had, but they just weren't ready to put him into the lineup straight away at the beginning of the season because they wanted to kind of see if they could, have him and Pennington back there. As a quarterback, he's a little bit more dangerous than I was willing to give him credit for. Whenever you hear about a team putting one of their best athletes under center, you wonder if maybe it's just a guy who's going to be able to run an option or two. But this kid's got a nice little sidearm delivery of the ball. He throws a pretty decent ball. And the good thing about the South County offense right now is that they do have the ability to run the football a little bit, but also to throw the football a little bit. And it's like I said, it's good balance. It looked a heck of a lot better than they did earlier this season.
And Greg, you mentioned the switch at quarterback to Chris Mitchell. For the folks at home who want to read about that, Justin Creech, one of our football analysts here at the Fairfax Sports Network, has written a piece, has talked to Rana, the former quarterback, Mitchell, great friends, and they're hooking up now as a great 1-2 punch over there at South County. And Pete Bendorf also talked about the switch, something that has sparked the Stallions. Go to fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. But Dave, you saw something out of this South County team that Greg may be able to shed some light on.
I don't know what you're talking about. What is that?
Okay, Titus Pennington is the go-to guy for South County. He's been there for quite a while, and Greg, you got a chance to cover him back in your heyday. Titus Pennington has come along.
He certainly has come along. It was funny because in the second half of the game, when Springfield was really moving the football a little bit and looking pretty good, I turned to Dennis Stewart, who was doing the game with me, and I said, where on earth is Titus Pennington? He wasn't getting a touch. And then he explodes in the second half. I mean, obviously that 80-yard touchdown run that gave him the win was a real clincher. And it was sort of strange because we were joking around. I mean, he broke off that run and gave the Spartans a world of time to try to get back in that ball game and win it. Because I think he scored with less than 3 minutes to go, but it was still plenty of time on the clock. He's a good, explosive running back. He kind of brings that element that West Springfield was really missing, not having Bailey there, of that explosive running back that can make something happen as soon as he gets through the line. And like I said, I mean, you do. It's funny. You don't expect Chris Mitchell at quarterback to be sort of the power runner, but that's what he is. He's sort of the power guy at quarterback, and Titus is sort of the speed guy, the lightning guy, if you will, at running back.
Now, Greg, you just mentioned it. Brandon Bailey, the star running back for West Springfield, was out, hurt his knee during the West Potomac game. How much did that offense miss him back there in the backfield?
I think they missed him in the second half a little bit more in the first. His statistics kind of tell the story coming into the game and make you a little bit more concerned about him than Austin McNair, the kid they put in there. I think not having him there gave the Stallions a little bit more confidence on defense than they normally would have, and especially when you're in the second half and you're trying to establish an offensive rhythm, to not have a star back there like that is important. But the odd thing about him not being in the game is we talked to Bill Renner before the game, and he kind of indicated that Bailey could have gone that night if need be, and they kind of sat him on, they put him on the sideline instead. And I don't know if he regrets that move. I don't know if it's a situation where he was a little bit more banged up than Renner was willing to let on, but he said before the game that Bailey could have gone, and looking back, they could have certainly used him to add a little bit of an offensive difference.
And Greg Wyshynski adding a bit of a difference here tonight, giving us his insight on the West Springfield loss to South County. South County now making a late push to join the playoff race, guys. So Greg Wyshynski, Fairfax Sports Network's analyst and play-by-play voice. Greg, want to thank you for joining us. We'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, boys.
All right, guys, so Brandon Bailey on the sidelines for West Springfield, South County's Chris Mitchell coming along, and Titus Pennington adding another offensive punch for the Stallions. John, Dave, are they still alive?
Oh, they're definitely still alive. I don't know if they're at the level I thought they were at last week when I said they were right up there with Westfield and Chantilly, but they're still one of the top teams around the region.
I'm going to say they're still at that level. In that game against South County, they didn't have Brandon Bailey, who's led the Northern Region in rushing going into that game. Also on defense, they're missing two key starters, one on the defensive line and one in the secondary. Those are big losses for a team that can't afford to lose players on the side that they're weakest on. I mean, they did well at the beginning of the year. They had a little setback against Annandale when they gave up 40-plus, gave up 14 to West Potomac, back to regressing a little bit as they had two leads in the fourth quarter and just couldn't hang on. But I still look for West Springfield to contend for that region title.
And staying in the Patriot District, in just a moment, Lake Braddock assistant football coach Chris Weiler is going to join us to talk about the Bruins' great start to the season. But Paul Fromont, I got to ask you, before we jump off of South County and West Springfield and into this Lake Braddock win over West Potomac, I got to ask you, South County, Titus Pennington, a kid that has been quiet throughout this season, is this the kind of late push that a kid makes a name for himself in his senior year and rides out on some sort of high, taking his team into the playoffs?
Most definitely. If this is your senior year, this is your last hurrah in high school. And if you better start right around now if you want to get that last push, you want to make it to the playoffs, you want to make a difference in the playoffs. So definitely this is a good time for Titus to start.
All right, in just a moment, Lake Braddock assistant football coach Chris Weiler is going to join us by phone. He coaches the offensive line and the DBs. He's going to tell us all about the Bruins. Guys, let's recap the win, though, for Lake Braddock. 41-0. Lake Braddock steamrolls over West Potomac. This is a West Potomac team that we had ranked, a lot of people had ranked. This is a West Potomac team that many people thought was a shoo-in for a playoff spot, and now they've fallen quite a bit, back-to-back losses. John, you know the boys over at West Potomac a little bit. What's going on with West Potomac?
I'm a little bit surprised of how they came out in that game. They had a tough loss against West Springfield the week earlier, a home loss. They lost that one 38-14. They come back now, lose 41-0 to Lake Braddock. Kind of wonders, they had that 9-game winning streak. It was once the longest in the region. Was that a little bit of a fluke? I mean, the Bruins right now sit at 4-0 in district play. They have one loss in the region overall. They are led by quarterback, punter, kicker. He does everything. Shane Halley. Also, he throws it to Mr. Keon Robinson. Keon Robinson and him have hooked up on several big plays of 50-plus yards or more this year. Also, Robinson has returned a couple of punts and kickoffs for touchdowns. Michael Harrison also does an effective job at running back for them. Funny thing about those three is, though, they all play defense, too. So nobody ever comes off the field. It's a team where you look at them and you say, hey, they shouldn't be a one-loss team. They shouldn't be 4-0 in the Patriot District. But every single week, they do just enough to get the job done.
For Lake Braddock, it was all about the defense. If you look at their 6 wins that they've won after losing to Robinson in the first game of the season, they've outscored their opponents 164-30 and had 2 shutouts, including the 41-0 shellacking of West Potomac the other night. So it's been pretty impressive.
And the Bruins have been a team that I talked with Coach Weiler earlier today, and he told me, look, this is a program that, we took over a couple of years ago. He came over with Jim Poitras. This is a team that a couple of years ago went 0-10. Chantilly rode that, went to the state final last year after at 0-10 a couple of years before, and Braddock now kind of on that same resurgence path. Jim Poitras doing a great job, and his assistant coach is having a chance to tell me that, this was a program in need of a weight room approach. And that's what they've been able to instill over there at Lake Braddock. John, this is a team that you cover. Defensively, that's really helped the Bruins.
I mean, defensively, it has really helped the Bruins. They're just stronger than teams in the second half. They pull away from them. I mean, you figure you have all the players that play offense that also play defense. They're bound to get tired. I thought that, too, against Lee. But you know what? They just don't get tired. They keep getting stronger. BJ mentioned they finished 0-10 3 years ago. They finished 6-4 the past 2 years. The 0 wins to 6 wins was the most in VHSL history. So Coach Jim Poitras puts the team on the right track. Lake Braddock, under the current playoff format, would have made it the last 2 years. It looks like they're going to make it this year as long as they keep on winning. Again, they have that nice game against West Springfield. That's going to be a true test for the Spartans and the Bruins to see just how good both of those teams are.
All right, looks like we had some trouble trying to track down Coach Chris Weiler. Maybe we'll track him down another time to shed some light on the Bruins, but we don't need him when we've got John Marcario, who covers the team so extensively and so well. Guys, at this point in the season, and earlier in the season, the very preseason show when we did our football preview, I remember all three of you guys picked West Potomac to win. I picked South County to win. And I'm not doing that to gloat, but I'm asking you at this point in the season, who looks like a better fit? Does West Potomac look like they can turn things around after back-to-back losses, after a 41-0 loss to the Bruins? Are the Bruins that good, or has West Potomac fallen apart? And can South County now, riding this new switch, can they get to the Patriot District Final?
Well, West Potomac right now, they're in a mental funk. I say mental because you get that first loss and you get this kind of a beatdown, 41-0. It's all mental right now. They have the physical tools to be successful in this district. They just need to snap out of it. They'll be fine.
All right, we're going to snap out of this segment. We're going to go to break, but when we come back, it's your favorite part of the show. FSN volleyball analyst Monica Moore going to join us to give us her top 5 in the Northern region. We'll talk a little volleyball as we come on back here on the Fairfax Sports Report. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this all-new episode of the Fairfax Sports Report. I'm your host, BJ Kuvarulis, and now I'm joined for your favorite part of the show. It's Monica Moore here with our top 5 volleyball rankings, and a little bit more than that as Monica gives us her FSN volleyball report. Monica, it's all yours.
Thanks, BJ. Well, another exciting week in the Northern region for volleyball. I'll go through the rankings really quickly, and Centerville is again at the top of the rankings. They had that big game against Chantilly on Thursday night, which they won, and they started off the week at 8-1. Langley is still holding strong in the number 2 position. They started off the week at 10-1. And another Concord District team, Westfield, is again in the number 3 spot, starting off the week at 11-4. Rounding it out, Chantilly, again at number 4 with the 8-2 record. And after being absent from the list for a couple of weeks, Stonebridge is back. They have won their last 7 games, and Coach Joe Recchiatore has to be really happy with how well they're playing at this point in the season. But right now what I want to talk about is the big game last night. It was another Concord District matchup that pitted Westfield against Chantilly, and Westfield won that game quite decisively, 3-0. After their loss to Centerville, they have been tearing through the Concord District. They've beat both Herndon and Chantilly now, and those are, of course, 2 of the top teams in the Northern Region. And tomorrow night, they have a game against Oakton, and that's going to be senior night for Westfield. They only have 3 seniors on that team, but one of them is, of course, Kelsey Maloney, who I've already talked about several times this season. She missed all of last year due to illness, but she's been back and playing really well for the Westfield Bulldogs, and I know that's going to be a very special night for her and the other 2 seniors on the Westfield team. Chantilly, on the other hand, has lost 2 games recently to both Centerville and, of course, to Westfield. But one thing to keep in mind is that they're a really young team. They only have 2 seniors on that team, and there are 7 sophomores that are getting a lot of playing time. And so Coach Charles Ezigbo has to be really happy with how well they're doing and their prospects for next season, because I think they're going to be a really big contender in the Northern Region again. And I also was talking about that Stonebridge team, and they are led by 2 sensational seniors, Megan DiMartino and Natalie Driscoll. I've talked about both of them as well. And they had a big game on Monday night against Thomas Jefferson. And Natalie Driscoll is, of course, known as one of the best liberos in the region, and DiMartino is one of the best outside hitters. But they both showed off what great servers they are. I think Driscoll finished with 16 service points, and DiMartino had 10. So it was a great game for Stonebridge. And before I want to go, I have to mention that I had a very unique opportunity last week. Herndon freshman volleyball coaches Kelly Roth and Mark Jurgelowicz invited me to come over and practice with their team and brush off some of my volleyball skills. And so I really enjoyed that and want to thank them and everyone involved with the Herndon program for allowing me to have that opportunity. And if you would like to read more about my opportunity as a Herndon Hornet for a day, you can read my article, which is on the Fairfax Sports Network website.
What's also on that website is your interview with 2 Herndon players, Leslie Buckingham and Megan Roth. You got a chance to catch up with them and do one of your Q&As. That's also at fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. And Leslie Buckingham had made a great point in your Q&A, which can be found on the web. We're also working on keeping our hearts in the game and staying focused. Last year we had some games when we would get down on ourselves, and I think that seeing a Herndon team, as you've seen them this year, Monica, really resurge and do a great job. They fell out of the rankings this week, but they could make it back because they are a team that plays with a lot of heart, and you know that program quite well, having spent some time with them. So if you want to catch up with more of Monica Moore's reports, go to fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Monica, thanks for joining us here on the Fairfax Sports Report. When we come back, the boys are coming back, and we're going to do some more football. Don't forget about the Liberty District. Big game coming up for those Warhawks. Are they going to be able to upset the Bulldogs? We got the answers. So come on back here on the Fairfax Sports Report.
I'm Nick Ashe with this debut edition of the Patriots Insider, a weekly look at George Mason men's basketball right here for Fairfax Sports Network. Each week I'll be bringing you the latest from Patriots basketball, including previews for the upcoming weeks and inside information you can only find here. Well, this past Friday brought Midnight Madness and a new season for the Patriots after what was a disappointing, inconsistent finish last season. And with the new season brings new expectations, especially with all 5 starters returning for Jim Laranaga's squad. Veteran leadership will help keep the Patriots atop the CAA standings throughout the season.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Fairfax Sports Report. If you were wondering what that was, well, that's an all-new segment here on the Fairfax Sports Report. Every week, Nick Ashew, who is our new Fairfax Sports Network college basketball analyst, is going to put together a quick update. We'll get a chance to check in with Ashew every now and then to check in on what the Patriots are up to and what their season will be like. But you can catch all of Ashew's updates, all the audio and more that you just saw on TV at fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Nick Ashew is going to be joining us every now and then to check in on those Patriots. John Marcario and myself will take extra precaution when we talk to Nick to ask him all about our Patriots, because, John, you and I both went there. If you're wondering who we are, I'm your host, BJ Kubaroulis, alongside of my fellow Patriot, John Marcario. This guy went to Christopher Newport, Paul Frummelt, And Dave, he went up north somewhere.
University of Mary Washington.
Yeah,
actually.
something, yeah, south.
That was down.
Yeah, I guess that's south. All right, so we have our college educations. Some of you may not believe that. All right, let's get back to the Northern Region football scene. We'll jump into these Liberty District standings. And, of course, Paul Frummel at Madison right up at the top. Is that a surprise?
It's not a surprise, actually. Madison 4-0, 7-0 overall. They are at the top. They deserve to be at the top, but you got Stonebridge right there. They are 4-0 in the district, 6-1 overall. Woodson's right there as well, 3-1 in the district, 4-3 overall. Then you have Langley, Marshall, both 2-2 in the district. Langley is 4-3, and Marshall is 5-2. That's a little surprise for Marshall, being 5-2, 7 weeks in. McLean is 0-4. Thomas Jefferson is 0-4 in the district at 1-6 overall. And South Lakes, after beating McLean at homecoming, they are 1-3, 2-5 overall. And if the season ended right now, they'd be in the playoffs.
All right, Madison played an incredible game against Woodson. It was all about the tale of two halves, guys. Some of you were there. John Marcario and Dave Buschenfeld were there. We got the highlights and the action, so if you weren't there, just check in on these highlights and check in on what happened between the Cavaliers and the Warhawks, and that has been a game that Madison has traditionally been a power in, but Woodson, it looked like this could be a year where they'd be able to give the Warhawks some trouble. John, Dave, you guys were there. What'd you see?
It was all about the big play in the first half. Woodson scored 3 times, twice, one on a big run, one on a big pass, one on a punt block that was returned about 40 yards for a touchdown. And then just flip it around in the second half. Madison outscored them 20-0 in the third quarter and won the game 37-19 after trailing at half for the first time all season.
The biggest difference, though, Dave, in that game was at quarterback. Will Clarkson, the Madison starting quarterback, he did a more efficient job of running the offense in the first half, a very good job of running the offense in the second half. They put up 20 third-quarter points and just put the game away. Woodson's sophomore quarterback, the youngest starting quarterback in the Northern Region, he also started 2 games for them last year as a freshman. He finished 4 of 10 on the day, 80 yards passing, but 65 of those came on a first-half pass. He just couldn't convert a lot of times in the second half, put his teams in long third-down situations. And Woodson, as you know, they're a run-oriented team. If you're going 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, Jake Sweeney and company, it's tough to stuff the box and fully knowing that they could run the ball again.
And once they get behind, they just don't have the explosive type offense that can come back from, when they're down by 15, 20 points.
And speaking of that explosive offense, we're going to get a chance to see that on some of the highlights from that game. The Fairfax Sports Network was there. That coming up in just a second. But, John, you look at this game, and is it any surprise that Tucker Barstow has a big game?
Now, Tucker Barstow, he had 3 touchdowns for the game. He was just a true difference maker. The Madison defense did a very good job of swarming. Here you can see Jake Sweeney's first half touchdown, galloped 60 yards. That put Woodson ahead, who they led for just about every single minute of the first half, Dave.
They did. But here you see Madison coming back, getting stripped from behind.
And again, it was Woodson played this game tough for sure. You see a punt block there, running it back for a touchdown. Woodson, obviously, these are 2 very well-matched teams.
Yeah, there you see that punt block. That was returned by Coley Buchanan, his first varsity touchdown. But again, Tucker Barstow, just so quick, kicked it into another gear, brought Madison back time and time again. There he ran for a long touchdown.
That touchdown was actually called back for a face mask, and on the very next play, as you see here, he ran it in again, so it didn't much matter.
And those of you wondering, where the heck did they play this game and where is their turf? Madison now has turf, as you can see that logo there, but a long bomb for Woodson.
Yeah, that's Gabe's 65-yard pass at the end of the first half. And here you see a touchdown. Woodson had all the momentum. They were up 19-12, but then Madison kicked a long 40-yard field goal, because Woodson had a personal foul, 15-yard penalty to put Madison in position. That really just changed the momentum of the game going into the second half, as it was 19-17 instead of 19-14.
Well, you talk about the second half, and in just a second, we're going to see those second half highlights. Dave, what changed?
Coach Live said that they went into the locker room and really got excited, knew what they had to do, and they just came out and took it to them. There you see Griff Cummins, one of his 2 touchdowns on the day. And another big run for him right here. I believe he gets taken down before the goal line this time. That sets up another touchdown.
Woodson just couldn't cover people down the middle. There you see another one right up the gut just for a touchdown. I mean, all Madison in the second half, again, up the middle.
That's what Madison has. They have that great rushing attack. You see, obviously, you see an onside kick that they got back. So they are getting all the momentum here, as you see.
That was a big play, though, right there. After the onside kick, Madison fumbled it on the very next possession, but Woodson just went 3 and out. They did that 4 times to start the second half. Couldn't do anything. There you see Tucker. Watch the next gear. There he goes.
160 pounds soaking wet, according to Coach Live. He's a little guy, but he can bruise him with everybody in the northern region.
All right, and speaking of the northern region, Madison and Woodson, 2 powers now in their own right, Madison being Division 5, Woodson being Division 6. Let's go to the graphic, show the folks at home what were the numbers. Let's go inside those numbers.
There you see Woodson. Jake Sweeney, he had 15 carries for 103 yards. But as we break it down, Woodson, 4-2 overall, 3-1 in the Liberty District. They had that one loss to Madison this past week. Tied for second in the district. They've scored 185 points, allowed 90, but they've struggled to score in games against teams with winning records. They didn't put any up against Westfield. They didn't put any up against Lake Braddock. They put 19 up against Madison, but none in the second half, Dave.
And those were the numbers going into the matchup. When you look at those numbers, guys, Madison taking on Woodson in the Fairfax Sports Network Game of the Week. All right, let's jump in. Madison-Stonebridge, Dave, is a game that you think is going to be quite the game. Tell us a little bit about why you think that one's going to be an important matchup in the Division 5 race.
Well, I told you last week that the next 2 weeks for Madison were going to define their season. They got it done in the first game against Woodson. Now they have their district rival, Stonebridge, coming up. The last 2 seasons, Stonebridge has beaten Madison 4 times, including twice in the playoffs, knocked them out both years. Madison really wants this game. I was talking to Coach Live Monday after practice. He said he has never seen a team that focused on a Monday before. They really want to bring it to Stonebridge and finally win one against them this year.
Well, obviously, because 2 of those losses ended their playoff hopes for Madison, so they don't really like the Bulldogs. That's safe to say. And you can tell that they are ready. That you 7-0 start, you're going to keep on going, try to go through those Bulldogs. And it's obviously it's a huge game for both of them because Stonebridge, they're trying to get their 3rd straight Liberty District regular season title.
All right, and speaking of teams, it's been a while since they've had titles. McLean and South Lakes, who could make the playoffs and could get a title this year if the stars were to align. Those teams played each other this week. Paul Frummel, you were at the game where 2 hoop stars met on the football field.
Well, it was all about the Price brothers, A.J. Price and Brandon Price. A.J., the senior wide receiver, had 100 yards receiving and a touchdown. Brandon, 123 yards rushing, the junior running back, and a touchdown. They dominated McLean through that first half. But then again, McLean, as Coach Rivera told me, does what McLean always does. They come back in the second half. They show that resolve, but they end up a touchdown short. I believe it was 3 of the last 4 games that has happened. McLean is in a spiral. They don't show up for all 4 quarters. It's something that really definitely need to fix. It may be a little too late in this season. But for South Lakes, you have Coach Ellenberger told me after the game that he watches those PowerPoints very closely. He has been for the last couple of weeks because he knows with this new expanded playoff system that South Lakes has a legitimate shot of making the Division 5 playoffs. And right now, they are currently number 8 in the Division 5 playoff PowerPoint rankings.
All right, the 2 hoop stars that hit the gridiron, of course, the ones in that game. South Lakes is A.J. Price, as you mentioned, and McLean's Tarek Amori. These are some kids that both averaged near or over 20 points a game during last year's Northern Region basketball action, and probably will do the same this year. But on the football field, these are the numbers they put up.
Well, the big play potential from South Lakes, you see A.J. Price with 4 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. And Tarek Amori, he only had 1 catch, and that was late in the fourth. That was in the 4th quarter, but it was for 64 yards. And you see A.J. Price's name right below him. A.J. Price was the man chasing Amori and tackled him on the 1-yard line, but they rolled into the end zone for a touchdown for McLean. So it was good to see A.J. going after Amori.
All right, and they'll do that when they meet on the basketball court as well. That will be a great matchup, McLean versus South Lakes. But no basketball action just yet. We're still in the fall, so we'll stick with football. And in football, upcoming this week on the Game of the Week for the Fairfax Sports Network, Marshall and Woodson will meet. Let's go inside the numbers and show the folks at home who's got the heavy side of the matchup. You look at it, John Marcario, Woodson, a team that is coming off a loss, 4-3 overall, 3-1 in the district, and Marshall in the district, it's about 500, but 5-2 on the season.
They are 2-2 in the Liberty District. Points for Marshall, 156. Points against, 109. Then you have Woodson scoring a lot, as I said, in games not against teams with winning records. 204 for, 127 against. Game is bigger for Woodson, so they can stay in that Division VI playoff picture, because according to PowerPoints, if you don't have 6 wins, you just can't even think about making the playoffs.
Are you interested about learning more about the game of the week? Where's the Fairfax Sports Network going to be? Go to fairfaxsportsnetwork.com and you can download game notes, all the numbers, graphics, and figures that you're seeing on your TV screen right now. You can download those at fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. All right, go to that website and comment. What do you think? What do you think of what we're saying every week? What do you think of our top 10? What do you think of the matchup? Who do you think is going to win? Vote on our interactive polls as to who's going to win the Fairfax Sports Network's Game of the Week. And another Game of the Week upcoming in the Fairfax Sports Network is in the Concord District. Let's go into the Concord District, Paul Frummel and Dave Buschenfeld, and show the folks at home who sits where, Dave.
Well, top 2 are the same as always. Westfield 7-0 overall. This is the 6th straight season they've started off 7-0, which is remarkable. They're undefeated in the district. Chantilly, still their only loss on the year, has been to Westfield. They had a big win over Robinson, 41-21. Torian Pace had 3 more touchdowns. He's been amazing. Oakton, the Cougars are on the rise, jump into 3rd place in the district with a 2-1 district record, 4-3 overall. Centerville falls to 2-2 in the district with the loss to Oakton, 4-3 overall. Robinson at 2-1 and 4-3. Hernan gets the big homecoming win, just like I predicted, over Yorktown. They improved to 3-4 overall, 1-2 in the district. And Fairfax had a tough time, as always, with Westfield this week. They dropped to 0-4 in the district, 1-6 overall.
Okay, and a big game coming up in the Concord District, because we got a chance earlier to look at the PowerPoint rankings, and Robinson, Oakton, both teams that are, kind of moving around in those rankings and in our rankings, because if you stay tuned, we're going to show you what our top 10 is here on the Fairfax Sports Network. But guys, this is an important game. Let's go inside the numbers. You both cover these teams, John and Dave and Paul. All 3 of you actually really jump into this. Show us who sits where.
Well, you mentioned an important game. You see, what they're both 4-3, yeah, but 4-3, you get a couple wins, you move up and maybe get a little bit home field advantage. If you move down, you might get knocked out of the playoffs. So you see Oakton right there at 4-3. They're 2-1 in the Concord. Their district rank, they're 3rd in the Concord. Points for 157, points allowed 115.
There you see Robinson 4-3 overall. They're actually 2-1 in the Concord. They're in 4th place. Points for 152. Points against 135. Big game for Robinson as they can carry momentum after this one, as they also have Fairfax and Herndon left on their schedule. It's nice to be able to string together possibly 3 wins down the stretch, especially when you're battling a tough Division VI.
Looking at the points for and points against and their record, these teams are very similar. They're 2 very good teams. Already have 3 losses, however. This is an important game for both these teams.
All right, Oakton and Robinson in the Fairfax Sports Network's Game of the Week. Look up those game notes at fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. All right, we're going to jump into the National District, and in just a minute, right after we finish these standings, we're going to be joined by Eric Gilmore, Connection newspaper sports reporter, who's going to give us some National District results. Let's jump into those National District standings now. Edison right up at the top with a 6-1 overall record and 4-0 in the district. 3-1 for Mount Vernon in the district, but 4-3 overall. Yorktown not far behind Mount Vernon, though. Mount Vernon having a heck of a season. Yorktown at 2-1 and 3-3 overall. Washington and Lee with a 2-1 record in the district, one of their best starts in the history of that program, and 3-4 overall, so just under 500. Wakefield at 1-2 and 1-6. And Stewart and Falls Church still looking for their first wins inside the National District, both at 0-3 inside the district. And guys, when you talk about the National District, it's always Edison that has the inside, outside track, whatever you want to call it. They've already dispatched of Yorktown this year in a really one-sided victory. But Washington and Lee and Wakefield played a great game this week. Eric Gilmore of the Connection newspaper is going to be joining us in just a minute. But look around the rest of the National District, guys. Who are some teams that could surprise you?
We look at Mount Vernon. They're 3-1 in the district. They're only 4-3 overall, but winning record, 3-1 in the district. They're a team that could really do some damage.
Everybody's been talking about Yorktown, but after their loss to Herndon, I'm kind of questioning whether or not they really have what it takes to make any noise in the playoffs.
One thing about the National District, everybody kind of likes to bash them and criticize them. As of now, they have 4 teams in the Division V playoffs. That's half the field right now. So although some of the teams may not be up to snuff some of us think. I mean, that's if you get half of your field in the playoffs, that shows that you're a pretty balanced district from top to bottom.
Edison right up at the top with a 6-1 record, and Ben Barber, John, we talked about it a lot. Ben Barber went from receiver to quarterback. He's played a little receiver as well. Where do you think he suits Edison's offense the best?
Well, I must say I was a little bit wrong on trying to tell Coach Von Lewis where to put Mr. Ben Barber. He actually suits that team best at quarterback. He can just make so many plays back there. A little bit recently, they've been able to intertwine him at possibly a wide out, throwing him the deep pass because they're winning several national district games by 3 and 4 touchdowns. That's going to be good for when they start playing Chantilly the last day of the regular season and get into the Division 5 playoffs. You might see a couple of trick plays where Barber splits out and Brandon Suggs sits behind the center. Edison is a team to watch out for deep in the region and state playoffs.
All right, and Yorktown losing a one-sided game against Edison, a really difficult loss for them, but they were able to bounce back, Dave, against Herndon. Herndon still did win the game, but a close game on Herndon's homecoming.
Yeah, it took a kickoff return right at the end of the game for Herndon to eke out that win, but it was a close one, but still not a very good loss for Yorktown.
All right, let's stay in the National District for just a minute. We'll go to Connection Newspaper's reporter, Eric Gilmore, who was at the Washington Lee Wakefield game. Eric, give us the rundown from that one.
Well, it was a good game, more for the Generals than it was for the Warriors. The Warriors were really struggling this year under first-year coach Keith Powell, and talking to him after the game, he wasn't happy, to say the least. But he said, he had a telling quote. He said, if you're going to go get a puppy at Christmas time, or you're going to go get a pet at Christmas time, you're going to go get a puppy instead of trying to teach a dog new tricks. Conversely, Washington Lee probably has the best player that no one's heard of in the conference, in Daryl Carpenter. Daryl Carpenter has done really well and took a 35-yard reverse up the right sideline to set up one of the go-ahead scores for the Generals. The Generals here now in playoff position and have a chance to sneak into the Northern Region playoffs.
Eric, what's the feeling against with the Generals? I mean, like you said, playoffs for the Generals? What's the feeling amongst the kids? You were there at the game. You got a chance to talk to them a little bit. What's the sentiment among the program?
Well, people have a hard time believing that Washington Lee and playoffs, can go in the same sentence. This is from a program that in 13-plus years has only won 28 games. And believe me, that's hard to believe. First-year coach Josh Shapiro has done an excellent job, and he's got these players believing, and he's trying to get these guys to focus week in and week out, and they have a chance here to make the playoffs. But at the same time, I think it's cautious optimism, if anything else. They know they still have to go to Yorktown, a big game, and at the end of the season, that team they haven't beat in almost 30 years. They still have a lot of work to do, but at the same point, there's a chance if they win out, they could do some damage.
Eric, you've been around the National District for a little while now. Looking at, you have Edison right there at the top, and there's Mount Vernon, Yorktown, and Washington Lee. There's a bunch in the middle there. Where do you think Washington Lee, after seeing them this week, where do you think they stand?
Well, Washington Lee is by far and away the fourth best team in the conference. I mean, there's no way that they can be even in the same league as the top three teams, Edison, Mount Vernon, and Yorktown. Mount Vernon just dismantled Washington Lee earlier in the year at Mount Vernon, 43-14. Alex Wicks, actually, the Washington Lee quarterback, threw for 372 yards in that game, a career high. But Mount Vernon, there with the triple option under Tom Glenn in his third year, is night and day. A different team from Washington Lee, but at the same time, they're a lot better. Mount Vernon has won 3 of their last 4, scored 6 touchdowns there in the first half to dismantle Falls Church, who's not very good this year. And I think Mount Vernon has a chance to at least be the number 2 team in the league.
Eric, I want to thank you for joining us here on the Fairfax Sports Report with your National District update. And we hope those Generals do get into the playoffs. They deserve it. It's been a long wait for them. Thanks for joining us, Eric.
Thanks, BJ. Thanks, guys.
Okay, guys, so, Washington Lee could make a push, guys, for the playoffs? For the playoffs? All right, we'll keep you posted at home here on the Fairfax Sports Report. If you're just joining us now, I'm your host, BJ Kubaroulis, alongside of Paul Frummelt, John Marcario, and Dave Bushenfeld for this all-new episode of the Fairfax Sports Report. And every week here on the Fairfax Sports Report, we name an athlete of the week. And this week is no different. John Marcario, this week's athlete of the week, you saw some highlights of him earlier. He ran all over Woodson His name's Tucker Barstow, and he's from Madison.
Yes, Tucker Barstow, also known as the Road Runner. In a win against Woodson last week, Barstow had 12 carries for 132 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. He also led Madison with 4 receptions for 33 yards and a receiving touchdown. Barstow has led Madison offense that has scored 21 or more points 5 times this season. The Warhawks are 7-0, tied for first place in the Liberty District with Stonebridge. They play the Bulldogs this week in Loudoun County. I remember after the game, Dave, Tucker and the boys, a lot of them in the background, you heard them say, "We want the Bulldogs, print it." Well, they're going to get them this week.
Some locker room material.
They're just excited for the game. Coach Leib, he doesn't think they have revenge on their minds. They're just excited to play in the atmosphere over at Stonebridge in a very big Liberty District game.
This is a team that can play in that atmosphere as well.
All right, speaking of people that are excited, folks at home are very excited right now because we're about to unveil our new top 10, which you can also find at fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. It's no surprise that right up at the top of our poll every week, and it's been unanimous all year through 7 weeks of Fairfax Sports Network football coverage, Westfield right up at the top. 40 points, unanimous among the voters, which is us. Last week, they were also number 1. Chantilly, 36 points right behind, just 4 points behind Westfield. And then you've got Stonebridge and Madison, Paul Frummel, not far behind.
You see the top of the Liberty District right there. We've talked about it in depth today. They got a game this Friday. Stonebridge Madison tied for number 3.
You see Edison there at 5th. They keep rising up our FSN rankings each week with more and more wins. 6th is Lake Braddock, and 7th is West Springfield, Little Patriot District block right there.
Got a couple of newcomers at the bottom of the rankings. Robinson and South County are tied. South County is new to the rankings this week, and Oakton at number 10. They were not ranked last week as well.
All right, so a little bit of shifting, a couple of new teams, and 2 ties in our Fairfax Sports Network Top 10. You can find that on the website at fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Leave your comments. What do you think? Do we have someone ranked too high, someone not ranked that you think should be ranked? Let us know at fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. You can also comment on our weekly picks. This is something that Dave Bushenfeld has dominated this season with a 13-5 overall record. Dave Bushenfeld of the Fairfax County Times. A clean sweep again. Dave Bushenfeld, how do you go 3-0 in back-to-back weeks?
I'm just the man. What can I say?
Wait, hold on. There's no yellow on my area.
And
what's
Paul,
going on?
when there's no yellow,
does
that
that
means
mean?
you didn't pick one team correct.
I'm not very good at this.
Paul Frummel going 0 for on the week. We got to rib him a little bit because West Potomac, well, they lose a game. Look, one person picked Lake Braddock, and that, of course, is the guru, Dave Bushenfeld. The rest of us picked West Potomac in what we thought would be a bounce-back game after they were not dismantled, but did lose to West Springfield in kind of a shocker. And then you look at the rest of us. We were all on the same page. Apparently, Paul missed the memo. South Lakes beat McLean. And Yorktown and Herndon played on Herndon's homecoming, a Saturday game, and Yorktown just missed upsetting the Hornets. So I went 1-3 this week, a bit of a rough week for me. John Marcario sweeping back after starting the season, I believe it was 0-23, is now 2 for 3 this week. John, how did you do it?
I keep picking Dave's picks, and then I find one game that I may or may not disagree in. So we've actually buddy-buddy. We call on Mondays.
that
and
is
we
just
that's how it works out. I am going to
talked
overtake you and you. I'm going to overtake you before the season's over. I got 3 weeks.
Don't listen to him.
All right,
Turn his
let's
mic
see
off.
if you'll do that with these picks this week. The new picks, check them out online at fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Oakton, West Potomac, and Stonebridge for me. But Dave, you think different.
Well, so far this season, I am 3 for 3 when picking against the 3 of you guys. I will go to 4-4 this week. I don't know why I think West Potomac is going to win this game, but my head
I don't
says they're going to win. Yeah, okay. And then Madison, you guys all think Stonebridge is going to win. John thinks it's going to be a blowout. I think Madison has what it takes, and they want the revenge. They're going to win it this week.
Now, wait a minute. We all talked about how great South County was surging back, but 3 of the 4 of us go with West Potomac. Is South County back, John?
They are back, and I will be the one that's reaping the benefits of the Stallions and Pete Bendorf and company coming back. That's why I'm the man, and that's why I'm making a comeback.
South County didn't suddenly become world beaters, and West Potomac didn't suddenly become one of the worst teams in the region. I believe that West Potomac will bounce back against South County.
Well, 3 out of 4 of us do, and last week Dave showed us that doesn't matter because this kid, when he goes against the grain, he does pretty well. I'll tell you what, who else does pretty well, though, on this show, and that's Paul Frummel when he does the Loudon Report. From Sterling to Ashburn, from Freedom South Riding to
Brambleton.
Brambleton.
Go everywhere.
To Potomac Falls to Algonquin Parkway.
Hey, Leesburg's in there.
Okay, go ahead, Paul.
All right, guys. Well, in the Loudon Report, we're going to make this really quick. It's the same as it's been since the beginning of time in the top 3. You got Broad Run at number 1, beating Dominion 34-17. You got Parkview beating Potomac Falls 21-14. That was an interesting game, however, as Pot Falls had the lead late in the game, but Broad Run Parkview came back on a 50-yard touchdown pass to win the game. Parkview 21, Pot Falls 14. And Briarwood's right there, number 3, 39-14 over Loudoun County. Quick things to point out in volleyball. Loudoun County volleyball team improved to 17-0 on the year. They beat Broad Run. Broad Run, the second best team in the Dulles District. Look at these scores: 25-14, 25-18, 25-14 against the second best team in their district. In volleyball, Monica already mentioned it, Stonebridge swept TJ 25-22, 26-24, and 25-18 to improve to 3-0 in the Liberty District, and 12-5 overall.
And Paul, you have some other news as well. Some golf report. Some golf news came down the pike today.
Some quick news and notes. Oakton's Amanda Steinhagen won the women's state title. Now, if you remember, Oakton's Danny Kim won the boys' title. Oakton in an individual sweep of the state title. That is huge for Oakton. And also, one more note for field hockey. Langley went undefeated this year, beating TJ on Friday. Langley has a bye tonight in the first round of the Liberty District Tournament.
You know who doesn't get a bye?
Who?
John Marcario, when he does Marcario's Madness. There's no bye weeks here on the Fairfax Sports Report. Take it away. Get crazy. Get mad.
Last year, the Northern Region introduced the running clock rule. It was met with mixed reactions, as the rule states that if a team is up by 35 points or more in second half, the clock continuously runs. The rule now, in its second year, has turned out to be golden. Sure, there's a possibility that a team could come back from a 5-touchdown deficit in the second half, but those chances are rare. Numerous stories have been written about high school football teams in New York, Texas, California, and several other states where teams win football games by 60, 70, even 80 points. In those games, no running clock was around, but lots of points were there. Coaches and players were then left to answer questions of, why did you run up the score? The running clock rule was met with most new things with reservation and disdain. But in the end, it appears it was a good idea. Take the Westfield and Fairfax game as a prime example. The Bulldogs could have hung 100 points on the Rebels. Sorry, Paul. But they scored 38 first half points and ended up scoring 7 in the second half. The final score was 45-7. A blowout, yes, but you can credit the running clock for that.
All right, and you talk about this new rule coming into effect and saving some teams from being slaughtered. What is not mentioned on the flip side of that, and it's a good point, obviously, I think this is something that's needed in high school football. What's not mentioned on the flip side of that, though, is the fact that there's players on, let's take your Westfield-Fairfax game, for example. Westfield is routing Fairfax in the first half, and then the clock starts running in the second. Is it fair to the backup players at Westfield who go through two-a-days in the summer, who practice hard every week, that never get any PT? That's their Super Bowl. And they got a running clock out there when they get in there to finally get some yardage, to make a catch, to score a touchdown potentially in the second half of what's already turned into a blowout. So the running clock is, we say it's saving one team from embarrassment, but it's taking an opportunity away from another kid or another team.
One thing that I disagree with you guys on with the running clock and with the playoffs, I think I'm coming at it from a player's perspective. I know it's been, 8 years since I actually went on the field, but
you're old.
I believe that the running clock isn't right because you want those players. Because anybody that knows Coach Banneker talked to him after a game, he always credits the scout team. He credits those JV kids for getting the people for getting his team ready, and they should be able to get into the game and play Fairfax. And on the other hand, it's embarrassing to lose 45-7, but it's more embarrassing when some outside force says, "This is embarrassing to you. We're gonna speed up the clock."
Dave, garbage time in the Northern Region, it's something that's been batted back and forth. There's obviously some pluses and some minuses to it. What say you?
I kind of tend to say what you're saying. You know, I'd like to see some of the other guys get in the game. They do get in there anyways, but it would be nice to see them get as much time as the starters do.
From a reporter's perspective on deadline, though, that's awesome sometimes. And you get the heck out of there and get your story in with more than 8 minutes to write it in your car. John, though, a great point. It is a running clock that does help high school football. The mercy rule is needed. Do you think it's being implemented the right way?
I think it is being implemented the right way. I mean, I perfectly agree with everything that you guys have said. I mean, it does cut away from playing time for other players that deserve it because, I mean, they're out there every single day in practice. They may not be good as, hypothetically, a Mikey Glennon, and it may be good. But it's just so, you do not want the bad publicity if, hypothetically, Westfield won that game 100-0, because that would have become a national story instead of just a region story. And if you just bring bad credentials to Westfield and bad credentials to Fairfax, you don't want that.
All right, so a national story and good credentials. You find those here every week on the Fairfax Sports Report. We're national players, guys. All right, let's thank the folks that make this show possible. But before we do that, we'll tell you we're on the website. We've done that a couple times here tonight. Go to fairfaxsportsnetwork.com and leave your comments. Every week, we're gonna play or show the comment of the week. So go to the web, check us out, and let us know what you think. FSN Game of the Week, Marshall's at Woodson. This week on Channel 10, Oakton's at Chantilly. The Cougars at the Chargers. This one was taped on October 5th. And, of course, our teammates, the folks that make this show possible. We're talking about CCI Screen Printing for all your screen printing needs at 703-978-0257. Want to thank everyone that works on this show. Pete Masisko, our director. Matt Lalick on audio and more. Brian Nern, our producer. Craig Sturbutzel, fantastic photographer. Myself, BJ Kubarulis. John Marcario and Paul Frummel of the Connection newspapers. And this strapping young buck at the end, Dave Buschenfeld of the Times Papers. Come on back every week here on the Fairfax Sports Report.